All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores. It's been a while, but let's take some time to dive into a video that's just purely for fun, for hypotheticals, for scenarios. We've been reporting thing after thing after thing. Now let's have a little bit of fun here. So apparently, Colin Cowherd said on his show that the Commanders will win the NFC East after drafting Drake Maye. Of course, we got to analyze everything he said in his segment. We're gonna do like a full breakdown of every part of Colin Cowherd's Commanders predictions, because he did predictions for the entire NFL. He's doing like a big bold predictions and who's gonna win each division, who's gonna be like the top seeds, who's gonna barely make it into the wild card, who's not making the playoffs, things like that. And so we got to dive into every little thing. Like, will the Commanders actually draft Drake Maye with the number 2 overall pick? Should they? Should they draft Drake Maye over a Jayden Daniels? Is Drake Maye literally Justin Herbert, like Colin Cowherd also said in this video? We're going to dive into that. We're going to compare Justin Herbert to Drake Maye in this video, especially when we're talking stats. It's actually really interesting. Doing research after seeing what Colin Cowherd said on this Justin Herbert's comp, it changed my mind a little bit. Also, what do stats and history say about the Commanders' chances of going from worst in the NFC East to first in the NFC East within 1 year? And also, what were Colin Cowherd's reasons for us winning the division? We're going to dive into that, because he doesn't just say that the Commanders win the division. He lists exactly why. What was the logic behind how he came to that conclusion? Is this even realistic? All of that type of stuff. So we're going to dive into all of that and more. Again, this is a fun video. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. I hope y'all are paying attention, because I did change the intro a little bit, added Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., and Cliff Kingsbury in it. If you haven't noticed, make sure y'all stay tuned for all of the content that I'm coming out with. I'm working on mock drafts, especially like a trade back scenario just for the fun of it. I'm still working on the Cliff Kingsbury theme mock draft that are going to get as many players that fit his air raid system as well as possible. Even though he's already admitted that it's going to be tweaked a little bit, he's going to run the ball more than he normally would, but we're still going to do the best we can with that mock draft. Also, I have so many other video ideas that I'm working on, film sessions for draft prospects, and I'm working on a video that's going to do like a full breakdown and review of every coaching hire and how do we feel basically as of today, like looking back. Hiring Dan Quinn as our head coach, do we grade it differently? Do we feel differently about it today than when the first day that it was announced? Of course we do. We're going to do a deep dive into that and an overall look of the entire coaching staff and how it's all played together. So before we dive into all of that though, that's other video stuff. Let's get to this video. Let's get it. All right, so we're going to break this up into sections. One of the main things that he said in this video, in this clip that he uploaded himself through Twitter, and of course you can find it on his podcast, YouTube, wherever you want to find it, but he said that the Commanders will draft Drake Maye. So we got to dive into that first. He compared Drake Maye to Justin Herbert. Let's start there. And shouts out to W Baker 18 on Reddit. I've already done some film watching on Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels, Caleb Williams, a lot of these top draft prospects, but I really like his breakdown that he did on Reddit under the NFL draft section. I completely agree with a lot of the things he said. He said physically, the comparison between Justin Herbert and Drake Maye certainly holds. Both are tall, 6'4" versus 6'6", and dense, 230 pounds each, and both have incredible natural arm talent and remarkably plus running ability for their sizes. But what's really interesting is that W Baker 18 went into this experiment thinking that this will not be an accurate comp. But then through his research, through watching more tape and things like that, bringing up a lot of advanced stats, he's like, wait a minute, this actually is a pretty accurate comp. Let's dive into it. It's actually pretty funny, because when you're looking at pressure to sack rate, and that was one of our biggest problems with Sam Howell, that's a problem that Drake Maye also has as well. And Justin Herbert was better than Drake Maye coming out of college at this aspect. The analytics community has been preaching that sacks are a QB stat. And in recent years, we've seen how sack avoidance is critical to the transition from college to the NFL. And when we're talking about 2023 Justin Herbert for the Chargers and 2023 Drake Maye to compare each other, Justin Herbert has a 15.6% pressure to sack ratio. Drake Maye has a bigger one, 19.5%. And I believe Sam Howell is something even worse than that. So right there, Herbert wins. When it comes to the Herbert versus Maye battle, when we're trying to comp them to each other, Herbert wins that one. But when we look at a lot of other statistics, a lot of other advanced stats that are pretty telling as to whether a quarterback will actually be a good quarterback at the NFL or not, Drake Maye actually wins. Let's look at turnover-worthy plays. Herbert has a 2.4 turnover-worthy play percentage last year. Drake Maye had a 1.9%, which was 7th out of 165, a 96th percentile. Not much of a difference here, but still some things to take away. Maye has a reputation as a big play hunter with a tendency to put the ball in harm's way, but he was actually remarkably elite at avoiding turnover-worthy plays in 2023. You should expect this rate to increase somewhat entering the NFL, but I expect Maye to be a plus turnover avoider as a pro. Really interesting. Let's also talk about big time throw rate. Let's talk about downfield passing. When it came to average depth of target, Justin Herbert had an 8.2 last year. Drake Maye had an 11. So that was better in Drake Maye's side as well. And also big time throw rate. Justin Herbert had a 5% last year. Drake Maye had a 7.5%. And of course, this is kind of comparing apples to oranges. This is one guy in the NFL. This is one guy in college. But still, Drake Maye wins the downfield passing comparison as well when being compared to a Justin Herbert. And then lastly, W. Baker 18 summarizes saying, Maye is a marginally more aggressive downfield passer, and Herbert is basically the better sack avoider. That's at the end of the day when you're comparing the two. And they process in different styles, but the end results are remarkably similar. Good take. Sorry for the clickbait, because he basically said going into this article, he was expecting that they wouldn't be as close as a lot of people think, but coming away from the stats, a lot of advanced stats, looking at the film over and over again, he's actually concluding that they're way more similar than a lot of us think, especially even him. He said, also continued to say, while I firmly believe sack avoidance to be one of the most important stats for a QB prospect, I came away from this review higher on Maye than I was previously. His physical ability combined with his remarkable downfield passing efficiency are so tantalizing. He is certainly not refined, and his QB coach in the NFL, likely the Commanders, this is him saying it, not me, will be critical to his development. That said, his upside is almost as high as I've seen in a QB prospect, and we shouldn't be surprised if he's the best quarterback in the NFC in 3 to 4 years. Coaching carousel aside, Washington fans should be excited. He put this article out there 16 days ago. So this is when we were already starting to get these hires in. Adam Peters already our GM and things like that. And that's when he took the time to go ahead and put this article out there. He said literally the only real difference in their comp that where they really separate each other is potentially processing and the offenses that they came from in college. That's literally about it. But he also says that Drake Maye is not a slow processor, but he has a tendency to slow down when the post-snap read changes from the pre-snap. So that's something coachable. You have to coach that up. That's something that's easily fixable though. Well, no, I wouldn't say easily fixable, but we've seen people be able to improve in that category all of the time. Now going back to Colin Cowherd, he also brings up the fact that Justin Herbert was better in the NFL than college, and then the same with CJ Stroud. And he said that he feels like Drake Maye will probably be the next guy like that. That the college, you have some questions, some concerns, but he gets to the NFL and balls out, especially with better talent around him. Because Drake Maye, out of the top 3 quarterbacks, I would say Jayden Daniels win against the best defenses. I would say that poor Caleb Williams had the worst defense on his team, so he had to go out there and constantly try to score 50 points a game to win. So those were the issues that he had to deal with outside of his framework. And again, Jayden Daniels had to go against the best defenses out of the top quarterbacks, but you could argue that Drake Maye had the worst offensive line and weapons around him. Caleb Williams' weapons and offensive line weren't great either, but you could argue that Drake Maye had the worst offensive line and weapon combination. So if you had to say like poor Jayden Daniels, poor Caleb Williams, poor Drake Maye, for the reasons that, man, they could potentially be better at the NFL level if they just had this. Those are those things. Like, imagine Caleb Williams not having to play severe hero ball because he knows his defense is going to allow 50 points a game. Imagine Drake Maye with an actually good offensive line and several good weapons to throw to. So that's basically, from my point of view, as to why Colin Cowherd is probably saying that a guy like a Drake Maye could potentially be better at the NFL level than he even was in college. Again, like a Justin Herbert and like a CJ Stroud. Now, as a Jayden Daniels guy, as I've always said, I prefer Jayden Daniels, but I still really like Drake Maye. And I'm happy with either of the two. And if drafting Drake Maye means we're destined to pull a Texans, what they did, the 2023 Texans, from #2 overall pick to division winner, then let's do it. Hey, man, if it's just set in motion, it's drawn up by the NFL script writers, draft Drake Maye, you win the division, then let's get to it. Again, I prefer Jayden Daniels, but I still really like Drake Maye. I'm very excited if we get either of the three quarterbacks, to be completely honest with you. But most importantly, I'm just very optimistic about this front office and coaching staff that we're building, to the point that whoever they take, I'm just going to give them the biggest benefit of the doubt and assume that they did everything on their end, everything in their power, all of the research, all of the thinking, all of the brainstorming, all of the strategy, X's and O's, statistics, analytics, all of that, to basically come to that conclusion to take that quarterback. So whatever they decide on, I'm just going to assume it's the right answer because they know more than I do. So even though I prefer Jayden Daniels, maybe Jayden Daniels may not be the answer. Now, moving on. He also talked about us winning the division, of course, and that's probably the main reason that a lot of y'all are here. How will the Washington Commanders end up winning this division? There's probably some fans of other teams in here looking like, how the Commanders about to win a division. So let's dive into the reasons why he said the Washington Commanders will win a division, and what was the logic behind him coming to that conclusion, and is this realistic? Well, first of all, Colin Cowherd first listed the fact that we have the most cap space in the NFL, and I'm assuming that he's assuming that we will actually put that to great use and make some splash signings at position of need, because you don't mention cap space when you're talking about us winning the division if you don't expect us to actually use it. That entire topic and video is just a whole separate thing in itself that I could probably dive into in a separate video. But whether Adam Peters and Dan Quinn will see it worth it to go spending crazy in their first offseason of taking over the Commanders is really interesting. So that was one of the reasons. Then he also says that he loves the coaching combination of Dan Quinn as head coach and Cliff Kingsbury as an defensive coordinator. He's very high on that pairing and feels like it's good enough to take us over the top and potentially make us the best team in the NFC East and allowing us to win the division within just 1 year of going from Ron Rivera to Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., Cliff Kingsbury, Adam Peters, and all of those guys. So that sounds like he feels like the Commanders now have technically the best coaching staff in the division, because he loves Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury, and he feels like that alone is great enough to take us from worst to first in the division. He must think that we have the best coaching staff in the division. And this is another thing where it's like, hey, that's a topic and video in itself that I may actually do a deep dive on. Do the Washington Commanders actually have the best coaching staff in the division, or at the very least the best coaching staff on paper, the highest ceiling with the most potential in it? We'll see. But I'm picking up, hey, Colin Cowherd, I'm picking up what you're laying down, my boy. And I love what I'm hearing so far. Let's keep it going. Then third, he says that he feels like the Cowboys and the Eagles are both very vulnerable right now because of age and drama. And those are pretty solid points, because between big time disappointing ends to both of their seasons weighing heavily on their shoulders right now, and with both of their cap space situations being pretty ugly, one more uglier than the other, and only potentially getting uglier, there is definitely an argument to be made that there is a great time to catch these two really talented teams lacking, because we can't argue against the fact that they're talented teams, but if we're talking about mentally and emotionally, when would be the best time to strike and try to take over the NFC East? It's probably this upcoming season. Because also, going back cap space wise, how are the Cowboys and Eagles even going to pay all of their stars? They're probably going to lose some people in free agency, especially on the Cowboys side of things. Because you have, of course, again, we're #1 in cap space with $84 million right now, with a lot of ways to get more. I've already done a full breakdown how we can get up to $121 million. But as of right now, as of today, we have $84 million, which is $10 million more than the guy in second place, who was the Tennessee Titans. You got to go all all the way to 18th in the NFL for the Philadelphia Eagles with their measly, cute little 20 million. Just so cute. You know what I'm saying? Good try. And then you got to go all the way to 26 to the Cowboys, who are negative 14 million. Negative 14 million. They still have a lot of people to pay. They got to worry about paying Micah Parsons, Trevon Diggs, probably Dak Prescott again somewhat soon. It's ugly for them. Like, future-wise, I don't know about them Cowboys. It was kind of like win now or it's going to get ugly for you. Because they didn't necessarily go all in like the Rams did to win their Super Bowl, but it is looking ugly for their future. They kind of sold out their future for the hopes of being better now, whereas the Commanders are going completely on a long-term route right now. And I don't know, Cowboys. It's been fun. It's been real, but man, it's not looking too bright for y'all or the Eagles. Because again, that huge disappointment that the Eagles had last year, they're spiraling out of control right now. We'll see what happens if they can even retain their guys, if they can go add more talent like they've been doing every offseason. I have a feeling this upcoming offseason will be like the least exciting, the least splashy, shiny offseason that the Eagles have had in a while. But now let's dive into whether this is actually possible. First of all, the NFC East hasn't had a repeat champion for the division in 20 years, which means historically that automatically eliminates the Cowboys and just basically leaves the Eagles, Giants, and Commanders as the only three teams that are allowed to win this division just based on the football gods and the perfect data that we have compiled over the last 20 years that has gone unbroken and unchallenged. The last 20 years, we haven't had a repeat division winner. So basically, if you just won a division last year, we could just assume we could put money on the fact that one of the other three teams is going to end up winning the division this year. Unless somehow Cowboys break a 20-year curse, it doesn't seem likely because they haven't been able to break their other 20-plus year curses of not being able to win when it matters most in the playoffs, to not go to the Super Bowl, to not win a Super Bowl. So why would they start now? And again, with them having the worst cap space situation by far in this division, it's not very likely that they'll be able to retain talent, especially if anything, gain talent. So a lot of us may just get passed over them in the division. We may just improve to a point that we just pass right over them. Of course, with them winning the division also, they have the latest draft pick out of our division. So it's not looking too good for the Cowboys, I'm not gonna lie. So with the Cowboys out of the way, just again assuming that we will not have a repeat division winner for the first time in 20 years. Let's just go. Football gods have spoken, so we're just gonna eliminate the Cowboys. That basically means, with the irrefutable evidence that we have, that the Eagles and Giants are the only teams we have to basically beat out for the division at this point, which is really interesting, man. Also, another part of this is the fact that we will be going from worst to first, and that is a little scary. That's a big leap, man. That's a huge leap. You got to remember, after starting 2-0, we ended up finishing the season 4-13 with the second overall pick. The Giants were 6-11, beat us twice. The Philadelphia Eagles were 11-6, beat us twice. And the Cowboys were 12-5, beat us twice. We didn't win a single game in the division, no matter how hard we tried last year. And so for us to go from not only worst to first, but to go from not winning a single game in the division to winning the entire division, that's a big leap, man. That's a bigger leap than a lot of people probably think. And if you're looking at betting odds right now, according to betus.com, they have the Eagles with plus 1,600 odds to go to the Super Bowl out of our division. That's the most out of our division, tied with the Cowboys with also 1,600 odds. Then you have the Giants third at plus 10,000 odds, and then you have the Commanders at plus 15,000 odds. So basically, based on those odds, none of us are likely to go to the Super Bowl. But when in doubt, if you're just trying to look to see who could potentially win a division, right now, most money is on the Eagles winning it because they have these same exact Super Bowl odds as the Cowboys. And again, the football guys have spoken. Cowboys, you're not allowed to win a division this upcoming season. So ignoring y'all, we're just going to completely ignore the Cowboys' existence in the division next year. We still got to beat them when we play them, but they're just destined not to win a division. Football guys have spoken. So New York Giants are third, and then we're fourth according to just based on Super Bowl odds right now. Not direct odds to win a division, but just based on Super Bowl odds, based on power rankings. People expect us to have the least chance. Right now, I think they have us only above the Carolina Panthers. We have the second worst odds out of the entire NFL. So to go from second overall pick, second worst odds to win a Super Bowl, and somehow win a division is really interesting. But now overall, just a quick review and logic breakdown of everything. First of all, let's take this all the way back to the fact that Cowherd is making this prediction, and we don't even have football again until another 7 months. So many things could change. We still have free agency. We still have the second free agency wave. We still have the draft, and then the third free agency wave after that. all in between now and when football will actually be played. So let's also not forget about trades. And we all know how impactful the draft can be just alone. The Texans went from the 2nd overall pick to the playoffs, winning their division after a great draft that included getting their franchise quarterback. So there's some hope for us on that side. And don't sleep on the 3rd wave of free agency that comes in after the draft, because good players end up getting cut for a multitude of reasons, most likely cap space reasons and things like that. And don't even get me started on how injuries can affect the outcome of an NFL season as well. But then again, actually, I have some really interesting stats for y'all. Injuries were down in 2023 compared to previous NFL years. This was arguably like the best injury-free season in the NFL in a long time. Shouts out to Mark Mask for this data that he provided on Twitter February 2nd. Injuries were down this past season. According to the NFL's annual injury data, players collectively missed 700 fewer games this season than last season, with the drop largely attributed to reductions in lower extremity strains and knee injuries. Really interesting. Also, there were 52 ACL tears suffered by the NFL players in the preseason and regular season games and practices this season. That's down 24% from the past 2 seasons. So you can conclude that maybe the NFL has something going to where they haven't necessarily fixed the injury problem in the NFL. The game itself is naturally violent. There's going to be injuries. I mean, humans are not supposed to do what we do playing football. We're just not meant to be. We were not designed to play football, to play this sport at all. Even with all of the protective gear, all of the science, all of the analytics, it still doesn't matter. You're going to have your injuries. But maybe the NFL has found some type of solution to improve our injury situation, and it looks like they potentially have done that. But at the end of the day, doesn't matter how many injuries went down this past season, whether the NFL has found ways to limit injuries from now on or not, it's always going to play a huge outcome in games and seasons, no matter what. Even though there's less moving forward than it probably has been, it's still going to affect how well teams play, who's going to win or not, and things like that. Let's not also forget the fact that we only have 45 players on this current roster. So Colin, Cowherd, I appreciate it. We appreciate the love. But the whole injury side of things, the fact that we still have the draft, multiple waves of free agency, trades potentially coming, and then also we only have 45 players on our roster right now. We don't even know what our team is about to look like. So again, I appreciate the compliment. I appreciate the hope. I appreciate all of the hype. But man, we have 45 players, and technically out of 90 that we're allowed to have during the off season, and we got to get down to 53 when we go into the regular season, but we don't even have a 53-man roster yet, let alone a 90. We still have a lot of 2023 starters not on roster currently, so it's hard to base your opinions on what will happen in the future based on what's happened in the past, because a lot of our starters from last year may not even be here this upcoming season. This may not even be the exact team that Colin Cowherd probably watched and was like, oh yeah, we see something cooking right there. I mean, who knows who we re-sign or let walk? Nobody knows what our roster is going to look like by September. Not even Adam Peters and Dan Quinn right now. But I can't lie. It feels good to hear a random national analyst, especially somebody that big and famous, to show us love like this. It made me excited to see the headline. That's why I was like, I got to do a video on it. Now, it's most likely that he's just simply doing this for clicks and views, especially from a sleeping giant fan base like us. I knew I was going to click on it. He got me. Especially since like our fan base is very excited about our future and probably spending more time watching and listening to sports shows now that we finally have a real reason to be hopeful. Like definitely this time last year in February, I wasn't this excited about the Commanders. I was excited about our future. We had Eric Bieniemy. I was excited. I wanted to see what Sam Howell was going to do, but it wasn't this. It wasn't top to bottom owner, GM, head coach, coordinators, assistant coaches, just top to bottom. I'm super excited. I felt like we hit home runs at all levels. Not necessarily with every hire, but at every level, I felt like we hit home runs. And so I've been definitely watching more videos, seeing how people are viewing the Commanders, looking at mock drafts. How does ESPN feel about us? How does First Take feel about us? How does Fox feel about us? Because I feel like this is the time that we can truly actually be hopeful. So Colin Cowherd, knowing how to generate clicks and views, probably was like, okay, that's a very optimistic fan base right there. Let me just say some BS and get those guys to watch my videos and basically get me some money. Maybe he's dead serious. Who never knows? You never know, but I'm still happy to hear it regardless if he's playing us or if he's dead serious. And it's fun to imagine and hope for, and I guess we'll just have to see. Also, before we get up out of here, And his prediction, I do want to add the fact that he has the Cowboys, Lions, and 49ers in the wild card for the playoffs, with the Commanders, Packers, Falcons, and Rams winning their divisions, and no Eagles in the playoffs at all. So take everything that I just said for what it's worth. Remember, when you're trying to picture whether the Commanders can win the division or not based on Colin Cowherd's word, remember that Colin Cowherd has the Eagles not making the playoffs at all, and also has the Cowboys, Lions, and 49ers as wild card teams, with the Packers, Falcons, Rams, and the Commanders winning their respective NFC divisions. Just want to keep that in the back of your mind before we get up out of here. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, like I said before the intro, I have so many video ideas, so much content. I'm super excited. It's just about freeing up my schedule from being busy with all kinds of things and finally getting a chance to do them and put them into shape and things like that. Mock drafts, film sessions, free agency mocks, everything, man. So stay tuned for all the content. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Really appreciate y'all. I'm out.